They said girls like her were born to obey, to serve, to suffer. But Mariam was born to rise in a quiet village bound by rigid traditions. 18-year-old Mariam was forced into a marriage she didn't choose. What followed was a harrowing journey through abuse, rejection, and abandonment. Pregnant and cast out by all who should have protected her. But this is not just a story of pain, it's a story of rebirth. From the ashes of her broken past, Mariam rose to become a mother, a leader, and a symbol of strength. This is the story of the girl they tried to break, and the woman she became. In the cool blush of dawn, when the village of Kurifa still lay under a quiet veil of mist, Mariam often found herself sitting under the acacia tree near her family's compound. It was her secret haven, a place where time slowed and dreams bloomed like the hibiscus flowers she sketched in the margins of her school notebook. At just 18, Mariam's world was made of charcoal drawings, the rustle of pages, the murmur of songs carried on the wind, and the imagined scent of freedom. She had the kind of beauty that wasn't loud, a quiet radiance that came from the way her eyes lingered thoughtfully on the horizon, or how her voice softened when she hummed lullabies to her baby brother. But in Kurifa, dreams meant little if they didn't align with tradition, and traditions were iron cages dressed in silk. The whispers began one evening while Mariam helped her mother prepare rice over the fire. "She is of age," said her aunt Zainab, as if Mariam were a jar of pickles reaching maturity. "Yusuf has asked for her. He's serious this time." Mariam's hands paused over the pot. Her breath hitched unnoticed in the crackle of wood. Yusuf. That name sounded like a storm rolling in. He was a man twice her age, perhaps more, with heavy brows, and a reputation that sent girls scurrying into their mother's arms. A traitor, yes, and a wealthy one. But he was also known for his temper, a voice like thunder, and the sour scent of power. Her father said little that night. But when he nodded in approval, Mariam knew her fate had already been sealed. She didn't scream, she didn't argue. That was not the way of girls in Kurifa. Obedience was praised, resistance was punished. Sometimes with silence, sometimes with slaps. Inside, though, her spirit thrashed like a bird in a snare. That night, under her thin blanket, she cried without sound, soaking the cloth like a baptism of grief. The wedding was set within 2 weeks. The sun was merciless on the morning of her wedding. It wasn't a large ceremony, just enough music and rice to mask the dread in her chest. Mariam stood under a white canopy beside a man she had never spoken to, never even made eye contact with, until that day. Yusuf wore an expensive bubu, white and gold. His beard trimmed his eyes unreadable. Mariam's mother adjusted her veil with trembling fingers. "Don't shame us," she whispered. As the imam recited verses and the crowd muttered prayers, Mariam lowered her gaze. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Not from joy, not from love, but from the burial of everything she had hoped her life might be. When it was done, she was no longer Mariam, the dreamer, the daughter, the girl who sang to the wind. She was Yusuf's wife. Yusuf's house stood at the edge of the village behind a metal gate that squealed when opened. It was large, with walls the color of dry earth and windows too high to see through. Mariam stood at the entrance, clutching a suitcase of her few belongings, a notebook, some clothes, and a single pencil wrapped in cloth like a relic. The gates closed behind her with a clang that sounded like the shutting of a prison cell. Inside, the house was tidy but cold, not the kind of cold that came from missing blankets, but the kind that crept from the walls and settled in the bones. Yusuf led her through the house like one shows a new servant, her quarters. "This is the kitchen. The storeroom is behind. The water tap is outside. I eat at 7. I don't like burnt food," he said without looking at her. He didn't show her their bedroom. In the days that followed, Mariam tried. She woke before dawn to sweep the courtyard. She ground millet by hand, though her knuckles blistered. She cooked dishes she barely knew how to make, always worrying. It wouldn't be good enough. She washed clothes until her fingers wrinkled and cracked. She kept her voice low, her eyes down, her presence small. But Yusuf never smiled, never praised, never asked how she felt. His words came only when something was wrong, and something was always wrong. "You call this stew? It tastes like wet ash. Why is the house dusty? Do you sleep all day? Didn't your mother teach you how to fold clothes?" She tried harder, but it was never enough. One morning, while hanging clothes to dry, a neighbor woman approached her through the fence. Mariam knew her vaguely. Fatuma, plump and curious, with eyes that darted like lizards. "So you're the new wife," she said, tilting her head. "You look too thin. You better learn to shout back. Yusuf respects loud women." Mariam smiled weakly, unsure how to answer. "He shouted at the last one too," Fatuma added, as if talking about a faulty kettle. "She left in the night. No one talks about it." That night, Mariam stared at the ceiling and wondered, what if she left too? But where would she go? Her parents had given her away. Her brothers would call her shameful. The village would whisper. A divorced girl in Kurfa was a ruined name. Worse, she had nowhere else to go. The final blow came on a Thursday afternoon. The sun was high and the courtyard smelled of soap and sweat. Yusuf returned from the market, his mood already foul. Mariam had forgotten to salt the stew, an honest mistake after hours of cooking and scrubbing. He tasted it, spat on the ground, then flung the bowl across the room. "You can't even cook," he barked. "What are you good for, then?" "Just standing there with your mouth shut like a goat. I should have married someone who knew how to be a wife." He yelled louder when neighbors appeared at their windows, and then for the first time he pushed her. Not hard, not violently, just a single shove that sent her backward, heart racing, cheeks burning with humiliation. Her head did not hit the wall, but her pride did. The neighbors said nothing, but they saw. And she saw them seeing. That was enough. That night, Mariam sat on the floor of her small room, knees tucked under her chin, staring at the door. Her hands trembled as they touched the pencil in her bag. With it, she drew a single line on the back of a torn paper. A line that curved into the shape of a bird. That bird had wings. She did not yet. But somewhere deep inside her, a voice, quiet, almost drowned, whispered, "Don't give up." There was a time when Mariam might have surrendered completely, when the idea of fading quietly into a life she didn't choose might have seemed like the only way. But that small voice inside her grew louder with each insult. Each lonely night, each tear she wiped away in secret. It told her there was more than cooking without thanks, more than enduring silence and slaps with the same numb patience, more than living in a house where doors locked behind her and laughter had no place. She didn't know how she would escape or when, but the desire for freedom had started to sprout like the first green after rain, fragile, yes, but stubborn. And no matter how many times Yusuf scowled or neighbors looked away, that hope began to take root. In the shadows of that cruel house, she began to observe. She watched which doors creaked and which windows had loose latches. She memorized Yusuf's schedule, the market days, the naps, the hours of prayer when he was least attentive. She befriended an old woman who sold herbs near the river and started to linger longer during errands, pretending to forget items just for the excuse to return. She wasn't ready. Not yet. But every day she survived was a step closer to something else, something better. And so Mariam endured. But no longer as the same girl who entered that house. She was becoming someone new. Not by choice, but by necessity. A spark had been lit, and in the chapters to come, that spark would rise into fire, into flight, into freedom. There are many kinds of prisons in the world. Some have walls and iron bars. Others are built from silence, cruelty, and fear. Mariam lived in the second kind. From the outside, Yusuf's house looked respectable, a painted gate, a concrete yard. Neighbors passed by and nodded, assuming all was well behind the walls. But inside the house had grown colder, darker, not just in temperature but in spirit. A house once lifeless had become a battlefield. It didn't happen all at once. The cruelty arrived in quiet waves. First, Yusuf stopped speaking to Mariam altogether, unless he had a complaint. Then came the rules, unwritten, unspoken, but always punishable. She had to anticipate his moods, his hunger, his preferences. If she guessed wrong, there were consequences: slammed doors, overturned dishes, curses that curled like smoke in the air. "You're useless," he told her one morning after she served him rice that was too soft. "Even goats have more value. At least they give milk." She stood silently, eyes lowered, heart pounding. She had learned that defending herself only made things worse. So she endured quietly, shrinking in spirit even as her body remained whole. Her voice had become a whisper, her laughter extinct. When she walked through the village, on the rare days he let her people, saw the downcast eyes, the quick steps, the weight she carried in her shoulders. But no one asked questions. In Korfa, a man's home was his kingdom, and what happened inside was his business. "She's just adjusting to marriage." Some said, "She must have disrespected him," others muttered. So the cruelty continued, unseen, unchecked. Then one afternoon, Mariam's fingers trembled as she held the thin strip of cloth she had hidden behind the outhouse. A friend had quietly given it to her after sensing something had changed. A home pregnancy test, simple, cheap, wrapped in paper. She had never done this before, but her heart already knew. 2 lines: pregnant. Her breath caught. For a moment the world tilted, not in fear, but wonder. A child inside her, her child. For the first time in months, something stirred in her chest that wasn't dread. Maybe, she thought, maybe this will change everything. That evening she waited for the right moment. Yusuf had just finished eating. She knelt beside him, her hands folded in her lap. "I have news," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I'm pregnant." She waited for surprise, for silence, maybe even a rare distant smile. Instead, his face contorted. "Pregnant?" he growled. "Are you joking?" She blinked, confused. "No, I thought you'd—" "Who said I wanted a child?" he barked. He pushed his bowl away, the clang loud in the quiet room. "You think this will make me stay, trap me like some village fool?" No, I didn't mean—" His slap was sudden. Not the first time, but this time it meant something different. Her hand flew to her cheek, but she barely felt it. All her fear was focused on her stomach. "I want it gone," he hissed. "Do you hear me? Gone. You're not tying me down with this burden." She shook her head. "Please, no. It's our baby." He hit her again, and again, until she fell to the floor, curled around her belly like a shield. Her arms were bruised, her ribs sore, but through the pain she whispered over and over, "I will protect you. I will protect you." The blows stopped. She lay there on the cold tiles for what felt like hours, waiting for the baby to move, to kick. Anything to tell her it had survived. And then faintly she felt it. A flutter. The child was still with her. From that moment on, her love for her unborn baby became a force of its own. Yusuf didn't speak to her for days. When he did, it was only to demand she leave. "You want to ruin my life? Then go ruin your own." She thought it was just another threat. Until one night he opened the gate, threw her bag onto the dirt and said, "Out." She stood frozen. "I said get out. You don't live here anymore. Go cry to your family if they'll take you." The gate slammed behind her, and just like that, Mariam found herself alone. No home, no food, no protection. Just a young woman pregnant, abandoned under the weight of a sky that suddenly seemed too wide. She walked the familiar path to her family's home, cradling her belly with both hands. Her feet ached, her lips were dry. But she told herself they would understand. They would hold her, feed her, forgive her. She was their daughter. When her mother opened the door, Mariam nearly collapsed in relief. But the expression on her mother's face froze her. "What are you doing here?" she said. Mariam could barely speak. He threw me out." Her father appeared behind the curtain, his face tight with anger. "You dishonored us," he said. "You couldn't keep your husband happy, and now you bring shame to our door." Mariam's breath caught. "Please, I have nowhere else to go." You made your bed, lie in it." Her mother didn't meet her eyes. The door closed, and this time there was no gate, no slap, no shout, just silence. For days she wandered. At first she stayed near the village, hoping someone might help, but the whispers came quickly. She must have done something. Yusuf wouldn't have thrown her out for nothing. She's probably carrying another man's baby. And just like that, the doors began to close. She slept under trees, covering herself with leaves when it rained. She drank from streams, her once soft hands grew cracked, her feet blistered, her belly grew heavier, her back sorer. Hunger was a constant ache, loneliness a sharper one. But every morning she placed her hands over her stomach and whispered, "We are alone, but we are together." That mantra became her shield. Some days she found scraps, a piece of bread from a merchant who took pity. Water from a well if she rose early before others came. She avoided Yusuf's street like poison. She passed her old school and cried softly, remembering the dreams she once had. Yet even as her body weakened, something stronger grew inside her. Not just the child, but a fire. She stopped waiting for kindness. She stopped asking for help. Instead, she learned to survive. She climbed trees to pick fruits. She walked miles to where a woman at the river gave her leftover porridge. She used torn cloth to wrap her swelling belly. Her once clean scarf now hung in tatters, but she wore it with quiet pride. She talked to her baby constantly. "Do you hear that bird? That's a nightjar. One day I'll show you one up close. When you're born, I'll find a place for us. Maybe near the market. I'll sell drawings. I'll name you after strength, even if you're small." People began to notice. Not everyone turned away. One old woman, Mama Abena, gave her a blanket. A teenager snuck her a mango. A child too young to understand shame offered her a smile. They were small things, but to Mariam they were lifelines. As her pregnancy advanced, the pain grew. Walking became harder. Sleep came in bursts, interrupted by hunger or cold. One night she thought she might lose the baby. Her back ached with terrifying intensity, and she bled a little. But she lay still, whispering stories, stroking her belly, willing the child to stay. "You're all I have," she said, "and I'm all you have. So we keep going one day more." And one day more became 2, then 5. Then a week, then a month. She survived. She endured. Not because the world gave her kindness, but because she refused to surrender. She was no longer the girl who dreamed under the acacia tree. That girl had been buried. In her place stood something harder, wiser, still gentle but not breakable. Mariam was becoming a mother, and nothing, not cruelty, not rejection, not hunger, could stop her from protecting her child. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden hue over the cracked pavement outside the town's small aging hospital. There, huddled against the cold wall in a tattered shawl, was Mariam. Her belly, round and heavy with life, rose and fell with each shallow breath. Her eyes, though clouded by exhaustion, still held a flicker of defiance, a tiny flame that refused to die. No matter how fiercely the winds of cruelty had tried to snuff it out, passers-by looked at her and quickly turned away. In their eyes she was just another fallen girl, a cautionary tale whispered to daughters at night. But then came Mama Zina. She walked slowly, her back bent with time, but her eyes still sharp, still searching for the broken things the world had left behind. She stopped in front of Mariam, studied her for a long moment, and instead of judging, she knelt down, pressing a wrinkled hand to the young woman's cheek. "You've been hurt," she said softly, "but the fire in you isn't gone. I see it." Mariam looked up, surprised by the tenderness in the stranger's voice. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent, uncontrollable. She hadn't heard kindness in so long. "Come, Mama," Zina said, rising. "Let the world reject you. My door is open." That was the moment Mariam's life began to shift. She followed the old woman, limping, heart pounding. unsure if this was real or just another cruel dream. But when Mama Zina led her into a warm home that smelled of herbs, old books, and bread baking in the oven, Mariam felt something she hadn't in months. Safety, Mama. Zina had no husband, no children. Her own family had been stolen by illness years ago. Since then, she'd dedicated her life to caring for those the world tossed aside, girls like Mariam, battered by life but still standing. "I cannot change your past," she said, as she wrapped a thick shawl around Mariam's shoulders that first night. "But I will not let you face your future alone." In the weeks that followed, Mariam began to rediscover herself. It started slowly. A smile here, a laugh there, the timid spark of trust returning. She began helping around the house, cooking meals, sweeping the floor. Her hands remembered the feeling of creating, of nurturing, of building something instead of merely surviving. She no longer cried herself to sleep. She talked to Mama Zina, shared stories of her childhood, her dreams, her fears, and Mama Zina listened, really listened without judgment. "Life can beat you," she told her one night sitting beside the fire, "but it cannot steal your dignity unless you let it." Mariam carried those words in her heart. Then one rainy morning her water broke. Mama Zina rushed her to the very same hospital where she had once been a ghost on the steps. Hours later, after sweat, screams, and tears, Mariam gave birth to a son, a tiny perfect boy with skin like caramel and eyes wide with curiosity. She named him Isa, meaning Savior, not because he would save the world, but because he had saved her. In the quiet of the night, holding her son to her chest, she whispered, "You gave me a reason to keep walking. You are my light, my strength, my second chance." Motherhood changed Mariam. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave her a reason to rise every morning stronger than the day before. With Mama Zina's help, she began sewing again, mending old clothes, stitching new ones from scraps. Her fingers moved with purpose, each needle prick a small rebellion against her past. Soon she added cooking. She baked flatbreads filled with spiced meats, steamed dumplings that melted in your mouth, and stews so flavorful they made the neighbors stop and ask, "Who made this word spread?" At first it was just neighbors asking for a meal here and there. Then someone paid her for a week's worth of lunches. Then a local school ordered 50 meals for a parent meeting. Bit by bit, Mariam's world began to rebuild, not on sand, but on stone. Her food wasn't just delicious. It carried love, resilience, and soul in every bite. She used her earnings to buy medicine for Isa, better fabrics for sewing, and eventually, after 2 years, a second-hand stove. She painted her tiny kitchen. Bright blue, hung herbs from the ceiling, and lit candles every morning as a silent prayer of gratitude. People no longer looked at her with pity. They came to her for help, advice, for stories, and Mariam gave generously. She remembered what it felt like to have nothing. 3 years passed. Mariam was now 21. Isa, a laughing bundle of energy, had just turned 3 and was already helping fold napkins and hand out bread to customers. The once homeless girl had become the owner of a small but thriving catering business. She had a name now whispered with admiration in the marketplace: Mariam the Strong. But the true test of her growth came the day she returned to the village she once fled. It was a decision that had brewed inside her for months, not out of revenge, but to reclaim her story, to show that the girl they had buried in shame had risen reborn when she arrived dressed in a crisp white boo-boo. She had sewn herself, Isa holding her hand. The villagers froze. Mouths opened. Words died in throats. Was this Mariam? Some looked away in guilt. Others approached hesitantly. Her mother was among them, older, wearier, and surprised. You've come back." Mariam looked into her eyes. "Not to stay, only to show you that your shame did not destroy me. I built a life. I am a mother. I am loved. And I am not yours to hide anymore." Her father stayed silent, his face unreadable. Yusuf was gone, no one knew where. Some said he'd fled after debts caught up with him. Mariam didn't care. He was the past, The villagers gathered offering food, words, apologies, disguised as questions. How did you do it? Where did you go? Are you happy? And Mariam smiled, a quiet, radiant smile. I found kindness, I found purpose. I found myself. That night she returned to the city. She didn't need validation. Her power didn't depend on their approval. She had gone not for them but for herself, to prove that pain could be transformed. At home, Isa ran into Mama Zina's arms, chattering excitedly. The old woman smiled, eyes misty. You went back, she said. I had to, Mariam replied. To close that door for good. Mama, Zina nodded. And now, Mariam said, placing her hand on Isa's head. We open new ones. In the months that followed, Mariam's business grew. She took in other women, abused, abandoned, lost, like she once was. She trained them to cook, sew, manage money. Her home became a sanctuary, a school, a place of healing. She hung a small plaque by her kitchen door. It read, Your past is not your prison. Rise, rebuild, reclaim. Mariam had not just survived, she had flourished. She had turned her scars into seeds, her tears into fuel, and with each plate she served, each dress she stitched, she whispered silently to the girl she once was. You made it. Thank you so much for staying with us through Mariam's powerful journey. Her story is one of courage, heartbreak, and ultimately triumph. We hope it touched your heart and reminded you that even in the darkest moments, there is always a path to light. If Mariam's story moved you, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future stories of strength and resilience. And we'd truly love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of Mariam's journey resonated most with you? Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never stop believing in second chances.